Hey friends, this is Marilyn from Tarot Clarity. In today's video, I'll be comparing the Rosenwald Redux recent deck that's currently running on Kickstarter. It should end December 13, 2025. And I'm going to compare its Minchiate portion. Remember, Robby Fowler thinks that the Rosenwald may in fact have been the pieces that we saw that were used as book filler in a book in Perugia may have very well have been part of a Minchiate deck or a failed Minchiate deck or a deck that just never came to fruition. We don't know. But he kind of has a suspicion that it might have been part of a Minchiate. And so I thought, and I've already showcased the Rosenwald deck in its entirety, the Rosenwald Redux in its entirety. And I've also compared the Triumph cards to other Rosenwald decks that I have. But now I want to compare his portion of the additional cards in the Minchiate with just two random Minchiate decks that I have. And I have several Minchiate decks. But I'm using both of the decks that both of the Minchiate portions of decks that I'm using were both created by Marco Benedetti, because you know how I roll with Marco. I love Marco's decks. Now the one is the Solesio Genovo, or from Genoa, which would be the most northeastern location. The second one that I have from Marco, and I'll have them in their respective order, is the Florentine. The Florentine Minchiate, which would be more, southeast. Oh, the Genoa. Did I say northeast? I should have said northwest. My apologies. More northwest. And then the Florence would be more southeast. And Perugia is where the book was published, but it's even further southeast than Florence. So let me put these three decks, these three Minchiate portions of these three decks together, and we'll just take a look. Now, I don't have any black and white Minchiate, because if I did, I would have put it against this one, because, of course, the Rosenwald that came to us through the book filler, they were black and white. Also, Robby tells me that his deck will come in a tuck box, but I have a printer's copy because it hasn't gone through the Kickstarter yet. So I have a printer's copy. And so here we have the one from Genoa, and here we have the one from Florence. Both of these decks are by Marco Benedetti. Okay, so we see the scalloped halo in these two decks, but particularly, right? It seems to be a particular trait of the Florentine region for this period of time. And so for the Faith card, which really does resemble the Faith card of the Genoa deck, this is the Faith card of the Florentine deck, but it doesn't really have, it has a different symbolism for faith. But we see, keeping in mind that this was done in the style of Rosenwald. Now, if you know the Rosenwald, you know that it's quite a different style, right? I'm just looking at the features, right? So it's just perfectly, it has the board or the tablet, and it has a spear, it has the scalloped halo for faith. For all three, we have a floating crown. And we have the scalloped edges that Robby put in the corners of, I think, most of the cards. And again, the scalloped halos, which was believed to have been a Florentine thing, although it does appear in the Genoa deck too. But it's in keeping, right? I mean, they're seated on a bench. It's got a floating halo, a floating crown, rather, scalloped halo. And forgive me if I took them out of the numeric order. I put them in this order particularly so I could remember faith, hope, and charity, and then prudence coming last, which is why I put them out of order numerically. Okay, so this one will be charity. Again, scalloped halos, same kind of symbolism with the flame, seated on a bench. And this one definitely is in keeping with the style of the Rosenwald, the rest of the Rosenwald deck. And we have prudence, which is why faith sort of threw me, because faith also seems to have had a mirror, unless that's something else. But prudence typically has a mirror and or a snake or both. So again, we have the scalloped halo. We have the same representation with a mirror and a snake. And again, I just put the cards in the same order. So please forgive me if they're not sequencing according to the numbers on the cards themselves. I'm just not concerned about that at this stage. I'm just trying to compare cards. Okay, in keeping with the Rosenwald, remember it's black and white. That's how it came to us. So we have the flames with the creature. I'm not really sure I remember what that creature was, but so we have some kind of is that a lamb? Yeah, I guess it's a lamb. It's a lamb in front of flames. So that's for fire. Oh, yeah. And here we have air, because we have the elements in the Minchiate decks. Right? We have the virtues, and then we have the elements, which this is air. So it's very much in keeping. And then these two have a little creature on the bottom. But this one the Redux didn't concern itself with the earth creatures. It just concerned itself with the element of air, which I appreciate that too. And then we have water. And in the style and in keeping with Rosenwald, I think the simplicity of this ship is just perfect for water. Now remember, quite a few years separate these three decks, particularly from this deck, which probably was 1490. It would have been a woodblock print, right? It wouldn't have been the sophisticated kind of printing that these two decks would have had. So, these other decks have an unfair advantage in having been technologically, at the time when they were created, just having technological, advancements having been made from wood carved blocks, right? Here we have the earth, which I always think that the Marseille deck took elements of this when they created the moon, because we have the big thing in the center, a circular thing in the center, which in this case is the tree. We have the towers on either side. Then we have this thing, and the only thing that's really missing is the crustacean coming up. So if I had the money and if I had the availability of doing the meticulous research, that would be my thesis, right there. I've mentioned it many times. Every time I take out a Minchiate, I bring that up. So here we have one in the style of what Rosenwald would have looked like, as per Robby Fowler. So it's got the right ingredients. Here we even have a creature, like a dog kind of creature, a bear, whatever that thing is. It's not in this one though, nor that one. Okay, now we're moving on to the signs of the zodiac, and I put them in the astrological order that they occur in. I think everybody begins with Aries, even if Pisces would be more accurate, or even Aquarius would be more accurate, I guess. Capricorn and Aquarius would even be more accurate, really. But for some reason, astrologers begin the cycle of the year with Aries. So I just put them in the astrological order, so please disregard the numbers. So here, in the style and in keeping with the Rosenwald, we have the Aries card for each. Now, it's in keeping with this one, except profile view. This one's giving us a head-on look. And here we have a rabbit, a hare, and this one's got a stave with it too. So it's pretty simple. It's simple. It's a simple representation. Now here, I'm not sure what that is, but it does appear, I think this appears like on the sun and the star card, the star and the moon card rather, as like bunting or something. So it appears here, so I'm not really sure what that is. But here we have Taurus, Taurus, Taurus. And again, bear in mind that Fowler did this in the style that he would have imagined that the rest of, in keeping with the rest of the Rosenwald deck. And we have Gemini. These two look like they might start a wrestling thing, right? They might be wrestlers. These two, I don't know, could be brothers. These two could just be sisters. I'm not sure. Alrighty, here we have Cancer, Crustacean, Leo. So the profile of Leo. Yeah, let's see my mother's Leo. Kind of looks like this one. Virgo. Now, I'm not sure I understand the significance of the iconography on Virgo. But she seems, well, she's in these two, she's winged. There's, I don't know, those cypress trees, I'm not sure. And she holds a feather or a stalk of a tree or a branch of a tree. In this one, she's got a fabric or a cloth, her sash. So she's holding it in her hand. Here she's seated as some of the other cards were in the Rosenwald. So it's very similar to how some of the other figures stood in the Rosenwald. And then has whatever sprigs those are supposed to be. And then we have Libra. Very simply done. And it's missing the porcupine and whatever that animal is, but I believe there's an Aesop story that is often reflected in Minchiate cards. So whenever you see combos like this, there was frequently Aesop's fable associated with the porcupine and whatever that thing is. Well, we don't have the reference to Aesop's here. We just have the inclusion of the scale for Libra, rather, excuse me. Okay, here we have Scorpio. And in both these cards, there's a reference to a duck. So there must have been a story about a scorpion and a duck, is my guess. That would have been something that happened at that period of time. And we don't have it here in this one. It's sticking to the facts. It's sticking to the signs of the zodiac, I guess, without the anecdotal references that these other decks have. Sagittarius. again, these other two cards have the addition of a boar. And this one is in the simple fashion of the Rosenwald, excuse me, and just the sign of the zodiac itself. Oops. Here we have Capricorn. And like, was it Aries that had a staff? So Capricorn also has a staff or something that he holds. This looks almost like it might have been like for a flame. So this might have been like a candle. This looks more like a straight up staff. And this is just the symbol for Capricorn, with his little goatee in each. The water bearer for Aquarius. And I think it nails it as far as the simplicity for the Rosenwald in this one. And Pisces. These two have the fish on the left upward and the fish on the right downward. I don't know if there's any significance to that, but for whatever reasons, this one is down and up. And this one has a little duck in there. The Florentine one does not have the duck that the Genoa deck does have. And it's interesting because they sort of transfer liquid like the Temperance card does. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? I presume it's water that these two fish are sharing. It's interesting. I don't know if it is or not, but it's just an interesting thing. So here we have it. So I have shown the Rosenwald Redux in its entirety, comparing the Triumph cards with other Triumph decks of Rosenwald, other Rosenwald decks. I showed the pips of this and all the Rosenwald pip decks that I have, and then the Minchiate portion of the Rosenwald Redux with the other Minchiate portions that I have from Genoa and Florence. I mean, I have others. I have a lot of I have several Minchiates, but these were the ones that I chose. So I think, I think he understood the assignment over here in creating additional cards that were in keeping with the original deck, right? I mean, this seems to be a pretty seamless, it seems like these additional cards, I mean, they have a little bit of a finesse to them, like his Fool has a little bit of a finesse to it, because some of the cards aren't as, of the Rosenwald aren't quite as elegantly drawn, but he brings a certain finesse to it. And in the additional cards, there is a certain finesse to those additional cards. Perhaps in the way that if the deck had been originally, if the deck that had been brought to us in those as book filler seems to have been done by two different artists, maybe for two different decks. So if the finer of the two artists in the book filler had done, the additional cards, I think it would have been done in the style that Robby brings to it. Something similar to that, anyway. You see how beautiful the one of the artists, who did the Rosenwald deck that came to us in book filler, just had like a beautiful, beautiful hand, and then the other one was kind of clumsy, right? You see that? Elegant. Here we have another one that's elegant, but then, and then here we have one that's elegant. But then we have some clumsy ones too. like her. Well, this was actually missing from all the decks, so he did it. He did it to replace, a missing Queen of Batons, but he did it in a fashion compatible with what was found in the book. I love what he did with the coins. He just cleaned them up so they're not jagged and have loose edges or anything, jagged edges or anything like. Now see, like this one. We had two different kinds of coins. So the one that's a little more crudely drawn, that came to us in the book filler, has a different coin than the others that had more of an elegant hand, right? Now he's a more elegant feature. He has more elegant features. His clothing is a bit more refined than, but this was the coin that came with him. But the queen that was in the filler didn't have this coin. So she, the assumption is that she came from a different deck. So the Rosenwald that we have grown to love was probably two separate decks, right? It was probably two different decks that were just thrown together to make book filler, But, and then Robby takes it a step further and says, I think it has characteristics similar to Minchiate Decks. And so I think that's very interesting. And even whether it's true or not remains to be seen. But I kind of like it. I kind of like the supposition, and I kind of like having a mass-produced, because this would be would not be considered an artisanal deck. And Robby says so himself. It'll have the linen finish, and it'll shuffle beautifully for years and years and years and years without concerning oneself about the delicacy of the papers or anything like that. I'm a tarot reader first, a collector second. And as much as I love the quality of this deck, this deck is just extraordinary, it truly is. But I tend to shuffle like a maniac, you know what I'm saying? And so I probably would baby these. I do baby these a little bit more than I would baby this one, which means that I'd use this one, you know what I'm saying? And I just thought I would showcase this deck against all the similar features that it has to other decks. And I hope you have enjoyed this video and the others. If the campaign hasn't ended already, because sometimes people see my videos 2 years after they're done or 5 years after they're done, this campaign for the Rosenwald Redux is occurring in November, December 2025. And they'll be available for shipment probably February 2026. Until next time, friends, peace, stay well, be brave, speak up, show up, vote.